Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 130. And for those of you who are out there who are going to Midwest, we have a conductor of a featured ensemble here with us for 2023 Midwest. And it's just one of those things that people are really looking forward to, I know. And as a career, we always think about having an ensemble that can perform at Midwest. And we are extremely honored today to have the band director from Westwood High School in Texas. His name is Thomas Turpin. And he's gearing up with his kids here to play and here in a couple of weeks. Thomas, how you doing? Thanks for spending the time.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Kyle, and hi, everybody. It is an honor to be here. Gearing up is definitely the right phrase, I think.
Yeah.
We are, it feels like in full five alarm fire mode now at this point. And we had a preview concert on November 15th with our kids. We played 8 out of our 10 pieces that are on the program. And coming out of a really busy marching season, I think it was
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a wake up call for everybody. And the kids, it was fun to just watch them gel together as an ensemble for the first time in a performance on stage. So they're excited. We know what we got to work on, and we're just having a great time in the process.
So you teach in Austin, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but you're wearing an Alabama shirt. What's the story?
So I actually was really purposeful when I wore this today because I think it's really important for people that attend Midwest, people that come to this just incredible kind of a pillar of our community, pillar of just band and orchestra instruction, showcase, whatever you want to call it, to understand that not everybody from Texas is from Texas. So I actually grew up in Alabama. I went to Athens High School, North Alabama, did my undergrad and master's at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and
Mm-hmm.
then moved to Texas to start my teaching career. I started in San Antonio, Texas at John Paul Stevens High School, and then taught there 2 years and ended up at Westwood. And this is my 15th year at Westwood High School. And I say the whole Alabama thing, and I wore this shirt just to kind of show that, not everybody that teaches in Texas is a product of the music education system in Texas. I was completely, totally, I felt like a lost lamb when I got here. And I just felt like the learning curve was so high, having grown up in a different state's music education system. Um, but I'm so glad that I did move here. I'm grateful for the mentorship that I've had since I've moved here and the opportunities.
So, why did you move to Texas? And first of all, before you answer that, the reason I said Westwood so clearly, as I was telling you, is because I teach at Westbrook High School, and I've said that 10 million times in my life. So I had to make sure I called your school right.
No, it's totally cool. So the reason for me moving to Texas actually goes back to a little bit of my drum corps roots. So I marched with the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps in 2004 and 2005. And my brass caption head at the time was David Bertman, who's the director of bands at the University of Houston. And he's one of my biggest mentors and teachers that has been so influential for me throughout the course of my life. And I just remember asking him tons of questions about what music education was like in Texas. Um, Obviously, a lot of the teachings of University of Houston and Eddie Green and that kind of school of thought.
Sure.
We did a lot of that at that time in the Cavaliers and with our brass horn line. And I picked up a lot of that, and I was really intrigued. And David was a great mentor for me, as well as many other teachers. Mark McGahee from Keller High School was one of our teachers at the Cavaliers at the time. And so Donnie Hull, who's at Haltom High School up in the North Texas area. So a lot of people that were influential for me kind of helped shape that decision that I was interested in teaching in Texas. And then actually came to TMEA when I was in grad school and did some research and some job interviews and landed my first teaching job in San Antonio.
It's so funny how, like, you were talking about mentors. I know this wasn't kind of like planned for us, but mentors are so huge. I mean, obviously, you and I are both mentors to tons of students over the years, and we've also had all these mentors that we go. And I think not only do we need to recognize that just who we are every day is the biggest thing that helps these kids kind of look up to us. It's not that we're special, right? But we're in a position to lead them well. So just, being consistent every day. And then also, being thankful to those mentors that you have. And, I think it's great that you try to give the credit away right away. We started and I'm like, I started talking about how great it was that you guys are performing at Midwest and all this, and you weren't like, oh yeah, I this, I that, I this, I that. It was all like, oh no, I'm in a great situation, and here are my mentors and all that. So I think that says a lot. And mentorship is just such a huge thing. I'm just hoping that people have mentors, and if they need a mentor, reach out. We can hook you up with somebody, and that people are being good mentors.
Absolutely. I would not be sitting here talking to you today if I did not have a just litany of amazing teachers that have influenced me, not just musically, but just the mentorship thing. We always tell our kids in our program the most important thing that we want for you as a member of the Westwood Band is to be a great human being. And
Yep.
then we use music as the vehicle to teach those skills of how to be a great human being. And ultimately we want to create lifelong lovers of music and patrons of the arts. But if you walk out of our band program after 4 years and you have life skills that teach you how to be kind to other people, that teach you how to show respect and gratitude,
Mhm.
that's the most important thing to me. I mean, all the performances are wonderful, and I'm thrilled beyond belief to be able to share music on this stage and this international platform. But ultimately, I want to make sure my kids say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and thank you when we're in
Yep.
Chicago and people go, oh, those kids from Westwood are really nice.
Yep.
That's the most important thing to me as a teacher.
I love it. I love it. A couple things I always point to too, as a side note, it's not all about playing your instrument when you get older. Even just when you have a child and you need to sing them to sleep, having a good singing voice, or you need to dance at the
I love
wedding with
that.
your daughter, being able to dance in time. I mean, it's like these basic things people think we perform music to make musicians, and we don't. But it's just part of a well-rounded human being. Anyway, I know I'm preaching to the choir.
Amen.
Let's talk a little bit about your community. Obviously, you're in Austin, which is a kind of a hotbed of a lot of different schools, but let's just talk about Westwood a
Yes,
little
sir.
bit. Tell us a little bit about the
Sure.
program and the feeder programs and all that.
Yeah. So Westwood is what we call a 6A high school. Texas has six classifications, 1A through 6A. 2,500 and above students is what puts us at that cap. We have this year in enrollment at our campus about 2,850, 9 through 12 campus. Um, Round Rock ISD is in the northwest, north central part of Austin, Texas. Serves well over 50,000 students. It is a ginormous school district,
Mm,
five comprehensive high schools. We have an early college high school. And inside of those five comprehensive high schools, there are full-time band programs. We support orchestra as well. So in our fine arts department or in our music department, we have a robust choir program, a phenomenal orchestra program that has a great history. We do collaboration with our orchestra department regularly. We actually have three full symphony orchestras. So our concert programs, as far as band goes, we have four concert bands, and the top three of those ensembles combine with our top three string programs, and we do symphony orchestra in the spring.
love it.
Um, we have a jazz orchestra. As far as marching band, we do all the things that would be expected, and do statewide and national competitions. We just took our marching band to BOA St. Louis Super Regional this year and had a great time on that trip. Um, and as far as our community goes, we are supported and we are very, very blessed to be supported by two direct feeder programs at Grisham Middle School and then Canyon Vista Middle School, whose honors band is also performing at Midwest this year.
Mm,
Um, and and the crazy thing, and another reason I'm wearing this Alabama shirt, their conductor and band director Jay Hagee and I went to college together at the University of Alabama, and so to be in this just wild scenario in this nirvana where I get to teach with some of my best friends and not just colleagues, but some of my closest friends. I could never have imagined this. And I'm so proud of Jay and the work that he's doing at Canyon Vista with those, all the kids there. And the fact that they get to share their music with the world is really cool at the same time. So shouting out to them, their performance is on Friday morning, 8:30 in the morning, Canyon Vista Middle School Honors Band. You don't want to miss it. They're going to be really spectacular.
And what day and time is yours?
We are also on Friday, and we are at 1:30 p.m. in ballroom 375 AB.
we're going to go over your program and sort of lots of the things along the road and logisticals and things like that as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when you decided you wanted to apply, okay. So my first question is, when, in your estimation, if somebody's thinking about having their group apply, obviously the first thing we all say is like, well, my group's not good enough, right? Like everybody has that sort of thought, at least I do.
Right.
And so like, what would be your advice for people who are like maybe thinking about it?
Well, it's funny we kind of started this whole conversation with the topic of mentorship because I have to admit when you first start going through this process, the first thing I did is I reached out to people that had applied and people that had performed before and just started asking questions. I started asking the same kind of questions you're asking about timelines. When do I need to start thinking about this? When do I need to choose music? When do I need to start the preparations on the pieces that we're going to go? What pieces should I pick? So I think when it all kind of came together for me, and full disclaimer, we applied 2 years in a row. And the first year that we applied, the spring of 2022, we were not chosen. And so I've known people that have applied before and they don't get in the first time, and then they're like, well, we're not good enough. So we're just going to give up. And it wasn't ever meant to be. I'm persistent. And
That's
I
important. I'm just going to say Abraham Lincoln was beaten 16 out of 20 times when he ran for office. But every time he'd lose 4 times and then win again. At least I think I'm accurate, but that's a story I always heard. So yeah, you're right. Keep working at it.
yeah, like seriously, do not give up in the process. And then and the hard part of it is if it doesn't work out that first time, that's fine. Your kids get the experience of like going through the recording process and working on detailing the music and trying to increase their expressiveness as musicians. All of those things that are really important from what I understand, the board of directors listen for very intently when they're choosing performing ensembles.
Yep.
So for us, I decided this past recording cycle, I made up my mind in probably September, October that we were going to go through the process again. And I started listening to music. Obviously, one of the components that I love, and I have to say it with a smile on my face because I'm a French horn player. So we have to perform a traditional march. So upbeats and all. I do love the fact that the Midwest Clinic values our heritage as a concert ensemble and a wind ensemble because we do harken back to military bands and we harken back to those roots of harmony music, but more importantly, like a military band is going to perform some type of a traditional two-step march. And so exposing our kids to that part of our history is really important. And so for our recording this year, we did George Washington Bicentennial March by John Philip Sousa. And I wanted to pick something that was going to showcase some of the strengths of our ensemble, and showcase something that was going to allow the kids not only to be in command of technical mastery, like the dogfight in that march is very heavy demands for articulation and technique, but then the trio allowed us to showcase some soloists and kind of pair back and really showcase the musical strengths of our ensemble. And when you go through the process, the first thing from my understanding is that they listen to, on the first pass, they listen to the march, and they kind of make determinations about the first pass of the ensembles from that initial handshake impression, if you will. And then the other piece that we chose to record was Manifestos by Paul Dooley. And I picked that because it had some of the strengths of our ensembles. It showcased some of our really outstanding soloists. I knew that we had a really strong student that I wanted to showcase their skill on clarinet. In the second movement, it's nice and lyrical and beautiful, and some euphonium moments. So play to your strengths would be some of my best advice. Like, know your ensemble, and I'm certainly not saying it's a game that you play here, but you have to be, I think, a little bit intelligent in how you program. And the advice that I got from so many of my close mentors, Mr. Richard Floyd is somebody that we have in our band hall all the time, and he is somebody that I just every time I'm around him, I just want to spend more time around him because he's so smart. He is so kind and he's such a musical soul. And the thing that he kept telling me is just make sure your kids play musically, make sure that the music shines through and it doesn't sound robotic. Like, make sure that what you know your kids are capable of doing is what comes through on the recording. And the biggest thing that I learned from the first year going through the process to this year is the first year we only did one recording session. And when I asked the kid for feedback after the whole process and asked them, do we want to do it again? And they did. I said, what can I do better for you? What can I do to make this a better process for you? And they said, give us more opportunities to record. And so we had three different opportunities. One was just a very informal, we just practiced what it would look like and feel like. We did it in our band hall. Um, One was just an opportunity with our parents there. The parents of the kids came in and got to watch their students up close and perform. And it was a really cool experience because parents usually are out in the audience and there's this like undefined, barrier between the audience and the performers on stage. And to have the parents just sitting 10, 15 feet away from their kids and watching them up close, that was an incredibly special part. And then we had a recording opportunity in our auditorium where we had our recording company that we had hired to come in and help us out with that. They were there and we had video cameras. And so I think building up to that opportunity was great for the kids, so they didn't feel all the pressure of we get one shot and that's it. That was something that was really, really beneficial the second time around.
There's so much I want to pull out of that. I'm not going to remember it all, but so one of the things that you're just continuing to like try to refine it, try to do it better next time, and that you seek your kids. It's not about whose idea is best; it's about what idea is best. The fact that you're talking about highlighting your best players, I mean, that just goes down to programming 101, right? If you have a weak trombone section, don't do Trombone King. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you have a great oboe player, pick something that features a great oboe player. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, this is a great piece. I want to do it." Well, you can want to do everything you want, but if it doesn't fit your kids, so like I really try to,
Right.
I try to do the same thing. You try to tailor like every program to the kids that are there, and I just think that's wonderful because a lot of people are probably going, "Well, my band is not going to play at Midwest anytime soon." Well, that's fine, but you can still tailor all your program, and that segues into another thing that's a huge thing of mine. I think we're kindred spirits here because the other thing I say all the time is like under program. Like people talk about just, I mean, maybe you can do a grade 5. My band can't do a grade 5 right now. So like I can give them a grade 5, but they're not going to be able to play it well. It's about doing simpler music at a high level.
I think for me, I try to, and this is a David Bertmanism. He always said, set the kids up for success. I want to do what I need to do to set you up to be successful. And if that means you are choosing and tailoring daily drills and fundamental exercises to, we did tons and tons of articulation studies and scale studies and Clark studies in E flat major because George Washington Bicentennial, the trio is in E flat major. And by the time you get to the dogfight, all that technique is in E flat major. So by the time that we were firing on all cylinders and performing that really well, it's not because the kids could just naturally play it.
Right.
We built those skills and we scaffolded instruction to get them to that point. So like what you're saying right now is so important. Like set your kids up to be successful. And for me, I think I'm somewhere in the middle, to be honest. Like if I'm choosing like your contest program, right? You've got a march and you have two other pieces. Like in Texas, we have to play off what's called our prescribed music list, and we can choose a march, and then we choose, two other pieces from this list that's been put together by the UIL and committees. And I usually try to pick something, like you said, under program, something that I know that they're going to be able to play really, really well. It's going to be within their grasp pretty quickly. And then I like to choose a stretch piece that I know is going to be something that maybe my trumpet section I know is they're younger this year. Like next year, right now I've got an incredible trumpet section in my wind ensemble. I graduate about 3/4 of them next year. So next year I'm going to be looking for that stretch piece for a piece for my trumpets that they may not be able to be successful on in that first 2 to 3 weeks, maybe in a month. But I know with work and building and scaffolding and all those kinds of things, they're going to be able to get there. That being said, there is the caveat of being realistic and then kind of having a pipe dream, right? I'm probably not going to put the Doll Sinfonietta in front of my wind ensemble kids next year, right? That's too big of a stretch. So you kind of have to know. And I think as a younger teacher, I was notorious, and every now and then I still do it, but like I was notorious for over programming. You think, okay, I finally am here and I've got my third band at this school and I'm going to play, grade 4 music with my third band. And then you realize, no, we need to be playing grade 1.5 at the highest level and making the best sounds and teaching shaping and phrasing and expression and clarity of articulation.
To hear you say that is
There's
great because like the amount of people who think, I don't know, I think people think that like 3 is a dividing line. Like you must play up
yeah,
to through 3 in middle school, and then you must start at 3.5 and go up in high school. And I mean, even if you
no,
go on JW Pepper and you select the filter that says easy, like the amount of high
yeah,
school
those are
teachers, the high school teachers won't even select easy. Like I'm all about the
right.
easy because there's some grade 2 in there that are just amazing pieces of music. And then before you know it, the kids have gone up 2 grade levels because you've set them up for that.
The last time I looked, Elsa's Procession was rated as a medium on
Oh my
JW
gosh.
Pepper. So there's something to be said for that. I think you have to be judicious and responsible when you're programming.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately it comes back to what I said earlier. It's about setting your kids up to be successful. And if they are struggling with technique, if they're struggling with tessitura, they're never going to be able to be expressive. And ultimately, isn't that what we're teaching kids to do, is to make music? And if they're struggling with the technique, if they are not able to play the range that's asked of them, if there are skills that are outside of their wheelhouse that they haven't gotten comfortable with yet, then you're really starting from a place of disadvantage.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong. I mean, like there is nothing wrong with me taking our kids in our wind ensemble and playing a grade 2 or a grade 3 piece of music and just letting them express themselves and really really emote without fear of being controlled by their instruments, like let them be completely and totally in control of the instrument so that they are speaking with their artistic voice through the instrument as a medium. It's them having the power to control their artistry rather than the instrument controlling them. And that doesn't have to just be a top band or a varsity band kid or whatever. If you have one band at your school, pick that level of music where the kids can sure grow through the program, but then also have that piece or other piece. If we're talking about your fall concert, pick a piece that's going to stretch a little bit, but then pick something that that they're just going to play the spots off the page, and every parent and person that's there is just going to go, wow, I didn't know my kid could do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and as you were talking about some of this great repertoire that people maybe shouldn't try playing, a couple of transcriptions came up in my mind, or additions that I think people should consider. You said Elsa, but then I originally went to Salvation is Created, that great piece. But a lot of people, like,
Mm-hmm.
you might be able to play the notes and rhythms, but are going to hard to make music on that. There's a Michael Brown arrangement that is a grade 1.5 or 2 that literally sounds like, it almost sounds like the piece. I think people should
Right.
consider that one. Also, Michael Sweeney, who's obviously a god, his themes from First Suite, he uses stuff from the first and third movement, and it's like
I love it.
it's just amazing, And I know people say, well, if you don't play the original, it's not worth doing, and I think that's totally wrong. They do have these great
Well,
arrangements of this other music that almost
yeah.
any band can get to.
And in fact, one of our middle schools right now is doing, and I forgive me, I don't know who the arranger is on it, but it's the second band at Grisham Middle School. They actually did it this fall concert, and they did the arrangement of Horkstow Grange.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember who the arranger is on it, but I just
Sweeney,
remember
that's
being in it.
Sweeney.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there it is. Okay. And so listening to our kids play that music and get the understanding and the history behind why is this piece important, they're wrapping their seventh grade and eighth grade brains around that. They may not understand the full scope of it, but at some point, maybe they encounter that piece again and go, "Oh, I remember playing Granger when I was in seventh grade, and that was a really beautiful melody." And now I understand the connection to this, or they play children's march when they get to, high school or something like that. And to have those connections and to expose their kids to being able to play pulse. I mean, to play the masters at an accessible level is
Yep.
incredibly important and admirable.
So we didn't plan this at all, but just a quick segue. I forget the episode number, but in the last couple months, it's like in the 120s. I did an episode all on Douglas Wagner's music, and I
Oh,
chose like
awesome.
12 to 15 of his pieces that are up to grade. I think 3.5. I thought of it because Children's
Hmm.
March was one of them.
Hmm.
His edition of
Yep.
that. If anybody's like looking for more ideas of some of these, go back and check out that episode. I forget the number, but it's called "The Music of Douglas Wagner" or something. And do you know him? Does if anybody knows him, you need to get me in touch with him because he's a genius.
I've played several of those arrangements, and it's just so cool to be able to let the kids don't wait for it. Like that's great music, and everybody be able should be able to access that, and have
Right.
access to that. And so, yeah, no, that's fantastic that you've done that. I think that's phenomenal.
All right. So let's get back to Midwest a little bit. So
All right.
how has this changed sort of your teaching in the lead up to it?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I've had to really and truly, it has made me a better planner, first and foremost, because you get the email that you've been accepted, and it's kind of like going through
Yes.
these different state. Yeah,
Oh,
you're like,
oh.
oh my God, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden the next day, like the reality
What are
hits
we gonna
in,
play?
it sets in, you're like, what are we gonna play? And then you start to get all the programming requirements. And I'm very fortunate because we've taken our symphony orchestra up to Chicago for Midwest a couple of times. So I'm not new to the process of going through the programming. However, with band literature, there are so many more bands that are performing, middle school and high school bands, and you're competing for these pieces, and you know that, oh, so and so has a new grade 2 that's coming out, and I really want to try to get that. So it turns a little like fight or flight reflex when the reservation system opens up,
Mhm.
because you're trying to just click buttons as fast as you can and enter titles and hope nobody else gets it. Um, so the planning aspect of all of this, not
Yeah.
just with the music and the literature, but really and truly coming up with a feasible schedule for our kids during marching season. I mean, that's been the biggest puzzle, to try to put all of this together to make it enjoyable, make it fun, and not overburden our kids, but also still take the steps and build in the rehearsal time to be prepared, so that we weren't starting this whole process coming out of
Right.
marching season.
So
Um,
do you rehearse marching band stuff during your band class as well?
that's a great question. Yeah. So typically, yes, we do a lot of. We have time during our. So we're on an AB block schedule. So we see our kids. They take 2 band classes. So we see them every day. And so we're working on the show. We're working on marching fundamentals. We're working on just fundamental exercises, both playing and physically, teaching choreography. Those kinds of things are happening during the school day. With the wind ensemble kids this year, we pretty much built a schedule. I guess let me back up to the summer. So I was really adamant, and I actually got married over the summer and went on my honeymoon.
Congratulations.
And
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And we decided that, for all of our lives as a staff, and for the kids, knowing they were going to have a really busy year coming up, we didn't want to take more of their time during the summer. We start our summer band camp usually last week of July. And so during our summer band camp, we took some time while the rest of the winds and percussion were like split out into sectionals and things like that in the afternoon blocks. We would do just brass or woodwind sectionals with the wind ensemble kids, and starting that preparation late July through the first couple weeks of August. Um, Once we got into the school year, typically we were doing, with the wind ensemble kids, 3 days a week of marching during class periods, and 2 days a week of just wind ensemble.
Yep.
And my strategy was to really work on the heaviest of the literature at the start. So the 2 big like grade 6 pieces that we're playing, Donald Grantham's Jeté au Bal, and then the finale from James Barnes' Third Symphony. That's where we started in the summer, and we were just working on getting notes and rhythms under their fingers, making them feel comfortable with it, getting them especially Ligia Paul, getting them really comfortable with the structure of the piece. And then kind of peppering in, okay, now we're going to start to work on Matthew Nell's piece, Strut, because it's a brand new piece and nobody's had the chance to perform it yet. So just trying to kind of like balance the rehearsal
Mhm.
schedule and get as much music as we could into their hands so that by the time marching season ended and we all knew this going into it, we finished marching season and then 2 weeks later we did a preview concert.
Yep.
So that 2 weeks between finishing up like state marching band contests and BOA San Antonio and this trip that we took to St. Louis for a BOA Super Regional, like that was a wild 2 weeks in our band program. And then giving the kids downtime, giving them some time to rest, regroup, and then flip the switch, and we're in full-time wind ensemble mode. It was
Hmm.
insane as far as
I
all
can
the planning
imagine.
goes.
And I bet you the kids are excited.
They are. I think that November 15th concert for us, if anybody out there is considering this, if you're thinking about, what would my scheduling look like if I get in, and even for my friends that are middle school directors, giving your kids multiple opportunities before you do like what everybody typically calls their send-off concert. Give them a couple of opportunities to perform, and please don't feel like you have to have your entire program ready by like October. Like that's not realistic.
Mhm.
If you're in middle schoolers, you have kids that have been playing their instrument for just a little over a year by the time that they're going through this process. So again, it comes back to setting your kids up to be successful and scaffolding how you're going to build to these, big performances where you're all of a sudden playing 40 or 50 minutes of music.
Yeah. Um, okay, so let's talk about sort of the travel plans, right? So you guys are
Mm-hmm.
performing on Friday. Are you
Yep.
flying? I assume you're flying or driving.
We are flying.
Okay.
We're leaving very early in the morning on Tuesday, the 19th, flying out of Austin. We'll get up there. We've got the opportunity to get our equipment truck up there the same day. We're sharing some equipment and sharing a truck with Canyon Vista. So we're able to get all that stuff into the convention center. We both have rehearsals on Wednesday at the convention center, and then performances are on Friday. And then just kind of building in all the stuff that, I mean, you do when you go to Chicago. I want this to be a trip of a lifetime for our kids. So the first night when we get up there, um, the kids had the choice to either go see Hamilton or to go see the Chicago Symphony Orchestra brass. And so
Mhm.
it's about a quarter of the kids are going to the CSO brass. I'm going to go see CSO brass. I'm really excited about that. And then the rest of the kids, they're going to see Hamilton, and they're going to have a great experience either way. Wednesday, they're going to get a lot of time in the convention center. We have a rehearsal. We're going to see the late concert of the Marine Band, and get to see that changing
Wow.
of the guard ceremony or changing of command ceremony. I'm so excited about that. That's just, I mean, the fact that we're going to be there at that same time as that's happening.
Can,
And
can you tell me about
um,
that? I don't know anything about that.
yeah, so the United States President's Own Marine Band is performing twice on Wednesday. They have a 5:30 concert and a 7:30 concert. And in the 7:30 concert, the current conductor, Colonel Jason Fettig, will be, and I believe the way I was explained to this, and that we talked about at our directors meeting in Chicago this summer, the commandant, I believe, I guess is the correct term. I could be saying it wrong, so I apologize if I am. Of the Marines, the Marine Corps will be there to actually do a change of command ceremony in the middle of that second concert, the 7:30 concert. And
Hmm.
so Colonel Fettig will conduct the first part of that concert, and then I believe Ryan Nolan, Nowlin, I hope I'm
Yep.
saying that correctly, will take over and do the second half of the concert, from my understanding of that at
Wow.
least. So to get to witness history, come on, that's amazing.
I guess I didn't even realize that Jason Fettig was leaving. I mean, I know he got a job, right?
He's going to be he's taking over Professor Haycock at University of
Right.
Michigan.
Right. Okay. It's
Yep.
funny because
So,
I have a friend who went to school with him in Manchester, New Hampshire.
oh
Um,
wow.
and I'm also really excited. This is not about this episode, but a plug. First week of January, I get to interview Michael Colburn, the,
Oh
the
wow. How
conductor
fantastic.
from the President's Own. So that's going to be awesome.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's amazing.
all right. So anything else with your kids that you're doing?
Uh, Thursday, I mean, we're just doing all they get to go either to like the Museum of Science and Industry or the Art Institute. We're going to eat pizza at Lou Malnati's. I am a
Mhm.
diehard Lou Malnati's fan, so I wanted them to get to experience that. And then yeah, we're doing concerts on Friday. And I think they get Thursday night, we're doing like a dinner cruise out from Navy Pier. So they'll get to
Well,
see, hopefully we've got good weather. Fingers crossed for a mild Chicago. I think when you're going as an attendee, you're like, Chicago, snow. I hope it's like a winter wonderland. And
yeah,
me
but
as
you
a
have
director right now,
75 kids or whatever.
and flights to get back out on Saturday, I'm like, I need it to be 40 degrees and no precipitation at all. I
Yes.
need a very
Yes.
mild Midwest this year. So
So
hopefully that's the case.
I don't really want to get into financial stuff. I'm not asking you to give any numbers, but
Sure.
when you're looking at the financial piece of it, like, did the kids raise the money, or was it provided partially by school or from boosters, or like what was the how did you structure that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So as a band program, we typically travel every 2 years. So we'll try to do kind of like a marching band trip, and then something that's along the lines of like maybe going to Disney World and just going to, see a Blue Man Group or Cirque du Soleil kind of show and get them the chance to do the park. So this year was really unique because we had a marching band trip to St. Louis and this
Yep.
Midwest thing stacked
Yep.
on top. I mean, it was a very unique thing. We've never done anything this big of an undertaking as far as travel in our band program. And I am pretty much convinced we will never try to do anything like this again when you have these things layer on top of each other. Our families were fantastic. They came together. We actually did a kind of a gala, if you will. We called it a Eats and Bites is actually what we ended up calling it. And we did some chamber music performances with our wind ensemble kids. Our families donated food, and we are so fortunate at Westwood to have an incredibly diverse community. So we had cuisine represented from our all throughout the world. We had Mexican cuisine, we had uh, Korean cuisine, we had Chinese cuisine, we had Indian cuisine. I mean, all these different cultures represented. And so people basically bought like tickets and they would go and, give a ticket for a sample of food. And it was just a night of social interaction, chamber music. And so we were able to do some fundraising through that to be able to kind of help offset the cost of the trip. But a lot of it was, kids either doing some fundraising on their own or families being generous and helping to be able to get their kids to these performances. So
I've I've
very,
also
very grateful for
I've
that.
also found on some of the stuff that I've taken kids to, when I tell them ahead of time and they know families know they have to plan for a certain amount of money.
Sure.
Usually, it's almost like the amount of kids who can't pay for it. It's almost equaled for the amount of parents who want to double up and say, "Hey, we want to
Right.
we anonymously want to cover somebody else," and it just like seems
And
to work out.
I think that that's so awesome. And that I think it just speaks to the whole idea of band community. And it's, our band program has our mission statement is pride, passion, and family. And our band family is amazing. We had exactly what you're talking about. I reached out and said, if you'd be willing to donate and help cover the cost of travel for other kids that may not be able to pay for this all on their own, and certainly had some of that. So always grateful for those people that are willing to help these help families that might not be able to do it.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's get into the rep that you're going to play.
Yeah.
Because as people, if they don't know, you're allowed to play some of the hardest stuff that your band can play, but you do have to play all the way down. You have to play a lot of different grade levels here. So if people are not teaching at a high school, I assume some of the stuff you're playing is going to be at the level they can achieve. So you,
Yep.
what are the requirements that you're given?
So for high schools, you have a essentially an hour long concert, and they ask you to program 45 minutes of music. So that builds in time for transitions, and
Yeah.
they do a presentation by the board and things like that. So for every grade 4, 5, or 6 piece of music that you program, you're supposed to balance it out with a grade 1, 2, or 3. And so it's not necessarily equal. Like a grade 4 doesn't equal a grade 1. It's just you got 4, 5s, and 6s, and you got 1, 2s, and 3s. You have to balance it out. That being said, you do have to have at least one grade 1, 2, and 3. So high school bands, middle school bands, everybody has to program at least a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3. Um, so that being said, it really is a giant puzzle. And the other thing with the program requirements is half of your music has to have been written in the last 3 years.
Mm.
So and really and truly, the Midwest Clinic, when it started 77 years ago, was a reading band. And it was an opportunity for publishers to get together. Like Jose, for instance, I believe has been around for many, many years. And so, it was a chance for a few bands to perform in kind of a rehearsal clinic type setting, and then for them to read new music that was being published and available. So it's always can kind of, continued and grown from that mission of being an opportunity to promote new music. So when we were looking at all of the requirements, we wanted to make sure that obviously the requirements were met for the grade levels, for the pieces being performed, the recency of the 3 years. But then for me, it was also really important to have diverse representation from composers of different backgrounds, ages, time periods. We wanted to have different viewpoints, different cultures represented. And so that kind of all went into the whole process of doing programming.
Great.
So it's a
All right.
lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd actually like to go through the program if you have it in front
Yeah,
of you, and
I do.
maybe we'll just talk briefly about each title and composer, and maybe why you chose it, and maybe a little bit about like, oh, this would be a great piece if you have a good
Yeah.
trumpet section and you want to hide your saxophones, or whatever it is.
Got it.
So, what are you opening the concert with?
So we're going to open with a piece called Boom Goes the Dynamite. And it is by Paul Dooley. Super fun piece of music. It's a great, about 5-ish or so minute concert opener. The reason that we chose this is because I wanted to kind of pay homage to the fact that we had recorded Paul Dooley's manifestos, and the kids really liked playing his music. And I was doing some listening, and Tom Kaniva and Ball State University Wind Ensemble actually premiered this piece at CBD&A last spring, and found a recording of it on Paul's website. And I was like, that's it. That's because you want to open with a bang, and no pun intended. This piece
Yep.
really and truly kind of gets the job done that way.
What's the grade? What's the grade level?
To grade 5,
Yeah. Okay.
published through Hal Leonard. It's great for teaching articulation and some double timing. There's the whole piece, boom goes the dynamite, boom goes the dynamite. That rhythm, one enda two en, one enda two en, is throughout the entire piece.
Cool.
And he kind of took that motivic idea and just turned it into an entire work.
Cool.
Great opportunities for percussion. Yeah, lots of cool stuff in there.
All right. What are you doing after that?
So next piece we're doing is Carol Britton Chambers' Byzantine Dances.
Great piece.
It
Great
is
piece.
oh my gosh, love it so much.
It's like
Carol
Fiddler, it's like Fiddler on the Roof, but for easier band.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah, absolutely. And the saxophone, alto saxophone, has a great solo in the middle of it.
Yep.
That kind of gets to be that fiddle tune, and it's just very emotive. So it's fast, slow, fast, essentially. Probably about 3 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes or so.
Yep.
Great piece. I mean, and there's clapping, there's snapping, so there's body percussion involved
Yep.
in it. And everybody kind of gets a little bit of a turn with the melody. Great piece for teaching.
Great
Especially grade 2
Yeah,
piece of
grade
music.
2.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. So excited about that.
What's after that?
So the next piece on the program is that's one other programming requirement. The Midwest Clinic requires that you play a march, a traditional march on your program. Everybody does. So that's why you see all the way up to the President's Own, they have a march on their program. So we are doing a march by Stanley Friedman. It, I believe, was originally published in like 1914. It's called Down the Field. The cool thing about this is my high school band director, Dan Havley, from Athens High School, is actually going to be the guest conductor on this. And the trio of the march was our high school fight song. It was the melody of our high school fight song. And it's just a way, I've always loved the march. It sounds like a traditional march, but the format, it doesn't necessarily go first string, second string, trio. Like there's some little variances in it. So if you're looking for a grade 3 march that is different, The trio, the French horn section, this was really important to me because I'm a horn player. The French horn section has a beautiful counter melody to the clarinet melody. So if you've got a strong horn section, this is going to be one to look at.
Mm.
And it's a really, really cool opportunity to feature and give the horns. Like if you are a horn player out there and you're a band director and you're like, please no more upbeats, take a look at this one
Yeah.
because it's really cool. And the last thing with this piece is my the arranger Justin Ward is band director in Birmingham, Alabama, Pelham High School. He did this arrangement, and he was one of my best friends. We went to high school together. We both had Mr. Haley as our band director. We were college roommates at Alabama, so it kind of
Right.
ties a lot of my own musical life together into this in a way to say thank you to some people
Yeah.
that mean a lot to me.
I love that, and that you're using his arrangement, and that you're taking your old high school band director and he's conducting. Right, I that actually we played at All Eastern for NAFME about 10 years ago,
Yeah,
and I had a couple of guest conductors, and one of them was my high school band director. It's just a way of saying, "Hey, thank you. You've meant a lot to me." I love it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Wouldn't be here without them.
of course. What's number four?
Number four is Strut. And this was the Buellman Prize for Composition winner. Every year, the Midwest Clinic hosts a open composition contest. And each year, I believe it varies. They do a call for a middle school grade level piece, and then they do a for a more professional or advanced band piece. So this year, we were asked to give the premiere of the winning composition. Matthew Nell, he is actually a student here in Austin at the University of Texas, studying composition, and the piece is called Strut, and it's really fun. We have the piece is actually about his schnauzer, his family's dog, and the dog's name is Snuggle.
Hmm.
And so on the cover of it, actually, I got to grab this and show
Yeah.
it to you for everybody that's watching. So this is the cover of it, and he had, I guess, a friend of his
Uh-huh.
actually do like a pencil drawing of the dog. So anyway, it's been fun to work on. It's very whimsical. It reminds me, I mean, he's got this compositional voice that when I met him for the first time, I told him, like, dude, we may want to hit pause. I'm getting an announcement coming through. Sorry. So the idea behind the piece is there's all these sounds of like the little dog kind of like uh scurrying across the living room floor, going to the kitchen to go get a treat. So you hear like the snare drum playing on the rim. It's supposed to sound like, the little paws like kind of scurrying across the floor. So when we were joking, I told Matthew, I was like, man, you're an old musical soul. Like he quotes like Hindemith inside of it. There's some Persichetti quotes. I mean, it is a really neat, complex composition. And still whimsical in nature. So we're really excited to get to play that for the audience and have everybody get to hear that for the first time.
What's the grade level?
It's a grade 4.
Four. And I assume he's been in to work with your kids.
He's coming out next week, so
Oh.
he's had a chance to hear it performed on our preview concert. He's been so gracious to come. He actually came to our spring concert last year when he knew that we were going to have the opportunity to perform it. So I've had a chance to interact with him, but he'll get to meet the kids next week. So we're happy about that.
And I think it's a huge thing too, outside of performing at Midwest or anything, wherever you are, if there's any local composers who play, do your
Oh my
best to do
goodness,
some of their music, even if it's just about having them come in so the kids can like go, oh my gosh, this is a real person who actually is named on this
absolutely,
paper.
100%. It's so important for and especially younger composers, composers of color, female composers, composers that represent diverse backgrounds. Like, please, 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 this is our future as far as our profession. We don't have to continually only play music of people that are no longer living. Like we have some great music that is being written as we speak.
Yep.
And it's important. It's our job to find that and to seek it out and to put it in front of our kids so they can have those experiences. Because you never know when, playing a composer that a child identifies with, and then they get to see them in person in their rehearsal, that can change the course of the kid's life. And so to give them that gift, it's an incredible responsibility to have.
All right. What's next on your program?
Okay. After that, we moved to Donald Granthon's Jeté au Bal. Honestly, arguably one of my favorite pieces that's ever been written for the wind ensemble. I think it's just such an amazing presentation of Cajun and Creole folk music. Um, Professor Grantham just does such an amazing job of presenting folk music in new and unique ways. He takes a fiddle tune and puts it into the clarinets, and then weaves the xylophones in and out of it. And it's just fun music. There's a brass band section in the middle. Um, if you've not heard the piece before, the middle part of it is very brass heavy. It opens up with a tuba solo and then goes into a tuba euphonium duet. And it's just fun. It's joyous music. The ending is epic and big and boisterous and exuberant. And just a really cool piece. And it was actually the first piece that I ever got to play with my college wind ensemble. And so it's always held a really special place in my heart. And
Yeah.
don't hear it performed as much as I think it should be. So it was a great opportunity to get this, what I think is now a staple in the wind band repertoire out there in a big environment.
And that's a grade 6.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yep. What's next?
So next up, we've got another world premiere, a grade 3 by Jack Wild. It's called Liber Illuminare. Really, really excited about this piece. It's lyrical. So Jack actually student taught at Westwood my first year here. And so we have been friends for a long time. He is just a wonderful human being, a great musician, was a middle school band director, was a high school band director. He and is now a composer full time. But he writes through a lens of not just artistry and creativity, but he also writes music that he knows is going to help kids progress educationally as well. So when I had the opportunity to commission him to write something, I wanted him to write something lyrical. And in our process of like kind of coming up with what he wanted to write, he was like, well, a lot of times people, when they commission music, they have very specific requirements. And I said, I want you to write a grade 3 and I want it to be lyrical. And past that, I want you to write whatever you want to. And he said, that's amazing, because I've been wanting to write a lyrical, slower piece of music. So this just kind of all came together, and it's actually inspired by medieval codices. So like a book that you would see that's, inscripted with text, but then there's all this gold foil around it. So it looks like it's literally lighting up from the page. So the title literally translates to book illuminated, if you will, or illuminated text. And so he uses all of these. He actually uses an Irish folk melody because he was inspired by a codex that he saw when he was in Ireland. And then he uses an Irish folk melody that he kind of has always wanted to do a setting of. And it's lush and beautiful at times. It's big and powerful at times. And then there are these moments where he uses some of the highest tessituras. The whole piece starts with like chimes and bells. So there's a pretty exposed percussion moment throughout the beginning. And then a flute solo. He uses the piccolo a lot to kind of highlight those higher colors. So it's still accessible for middle school, for younger grade level, I think, but it presents some colors that may not always be showcased in that grade level of music, which is really cool.
That's great. That's great. And I hope after you play it, a lot of other people play it too.
I hope so too. I really do too. It's just beautiful music. So I'm excited for Jack and for him to have this piece out in the world. And so after that piece, we've got a piece by one of my favorite human beings and a great friend, Omar Thomas. A few years ago, when the Vandergrift High School Wind Ensemble went to Midwest, they commissioned him to write a piece called Caravana. And Caravana is essentially a celebration of one of the largest carnival type parties that happens in Caribbean countries. Caravana, it's like the name of a Caribbean carnival celebration, essentially. And one of those big parties that happens outside of the Caribbean is actually in Toronto in Canada. And so his idea of creating a piece of music that we're performing, it's called Caravana After Party, is to take some of those ideas of calypso music and those types of rhythms that are indicative of that style of music and put it into a space that's more accessible for younger students to be able to perform it. Caravana is a really amazing piece of music. It's incredibly challenging. And so being able to take that music and make it accessible for younger players, in this case, in a grade 3 type of an arrangement of those ideas, is something that's really special. Ultimately, the piece is just about a 3.5 minute party. You have all of these great dance grooves and rhythms that happen throughout it. The middle section is called the rhythm section. It's spelled RIDDIM. And it's essentially kind of like a percussion breakdown. And the kids get to do some body percussion. They get to play with pencils on their stands, and just be in that groove and express that joy, which is present in those celebrations. So Caravana After Party, you have to check it out. Look on Omar's website, omarthomasmusic.com. It's there. You can check it out. It's a cool piece. And our kids, honestly, I think may argue that that's probably their favorite piece on the program that they're going to perform. 3 more pieces. So the piece after that is called Above the Ground. It is a grade 1. It is by Jose Ignacio Blesa Lol. He is a Spanish composer, and really, really, really cool melodies, kind of storing movie score-esque, but yet very accessible. It makes the ensemble sound incredibly mature, manageable tessituras and ranges across the board. A lot of great writing for percussion. And one of the cool things that I like about it as a grade 1, it introduces the tritone. And so the kids actually, and they're in accessible ranges. And so if you're working on, your daily drills or your fundamentals and you're doing Remington exercises, it's a great way to reinforce those things that you're working on with your kiddos right there. So really have had fun working on that, and I'm glad that we get to play that on that portion of the concert.
Cool.
2 more pieces. We've got featuring a soloist. We're doing John Mackey's Trumpet Concerto, Antique Violences. We're doing the last movement of it called The Curtain Calls. It brings back all the themes of the first 3 movements of the concerto. And we're incredibly excited to have one of our friends from right down the street, Jerry Junkin, who's the conductor of the University of Texas Wind Ensemble and the Dallas Winds. He's going to guest conduct for us on that. And then we're thrilled to have our new trumpet professor at the University of Texas, Caleb Hudson, is going to be soloing with us on that piece.
Wow, what a blast. That's awesome.
Just an incredible musician, and a great person. And we're thrilled to be able to share the stage with those 2 musicians.
Wow. Special.
So then, yeah. And I think it hasn't quite sunk in yet because we're still coordinating all of our schedules. And so we're still working on that piece. In fact, one of our trumpet teachers, Sam Acosta, who is doing his doctorate at UT right now with Professor Hudson, is going to be our guest soloist for our send-off concert. And then Caleb's going to play with us in Chicago. But it's cool that Professor Junkin's going to get to conduct, somebody that plays in his wind ensemble and then also his teacher at the same time. So there's and then Sam actually teaches some of our trumpets in our ensemble. So it's kind of, getting to see our students work with their teacher, work with their teacher.
Yeah.
There's some scaffolding there that's really cool,
Super cool
in the process. And then last piece on the program, we're doing the finale from James Barnes' Third Symphony. It's one of my favorite pieces of music. Again, I got to play it when I was in college. It opens with this really triumphant horn call, and it's something that I was really, really wanting to do when I was choosing the program. Is I wanted to pick a piece of music to close out the program that was a great melody. Like, I think about my favorite concerts that I've ever been to at Midwest, and you walk out of there singing, you walk out of the concert smiling, you walk out going, man, I'm inspired. And I wanted to pick something that hopefully would make people smile, that would excite them, that would make them walk out of that hall just wanting to sing a melody. And so I think that the melody from that symphony and particularly from this last movement is upbeat, exciting, boisterous, and just something that people will enjoy. So that was the idea behind that.
All right, we're going to finish talking about mentorship, and my one of my mentors, Jeff Smith. I don't know if you know Thomas or people know, but he just passed away this past week. This past
Oh, I'm
month.
so sorry.
It was pretty tragic, and it's been really tough. But I've had a lot of great mentors along the way. But Jeff is a mentor of mine. We started this podcast a couple of years ago just to try to have this living conversational document for people to go to be able to connect with people, right? The great thing about podcasts is, and not just this podcast, but any podcast, is like you can go back 3 years and find an episode based on sleep or vitamin E or like whatever the
Hmm.
heck you want it to be on. And,
Right.
you can search keywords or you can follow certain podcasts. And I just think the podcast medium is great because it's a living thing. Like this episode, I'm very lucky. This is episode number 130 that you've been gracious enough to be on. And so that's like 130 hours, give or take, of like professional
Sure.
development that people could have at any time they want. And I'm not plugging this about myself, but like I've had so many great guests and so many great repertoire and all these things that people can really connect with somebody through a podcast. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, growingband.com or on Facebook, if anybody wants to join the community and all this, it's all about that community. And if I can help anybody in any way, whether it be through programming or helping you through an event or whatever like that, and I'm sure if people reach out to you as well, you'd be happy to help them. So yeah, being a mentor through the podcast has been really awesome. And I know you have some mentors and things that you wanna thank too.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And I just to echo what you're saying, like I think for there to be so many great resources out there, sometimes it's easy, even in a state of Texas or like a school district where I am right now, it's easy to get in your own head and isolate and think, I'm the only one that can do this. I am bearing this burden myself. And, even if you don't have a colleague that you teach with every day, just knowing that you are able to find resources to connect with people, I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, my dad was in sales for his entire life. And the thing that I remember the most from him is a lesson growing up. He's like, what's the worst that somebody can say? No. And then you go on and you ask again. And so I think not being afraid to ask and utilize those resources. And I will tell you, honestly, some of the best advice that I've ever gotten from another band director is do not be afraid or so self-conscious to invite somebody into your rehearsal, because one of the best things for your kids to see is that you are not the keeper of knowledge of all things band. Band does not start and end with you. It will not end with you when you finish teaching. It will go on. And for you, I'll say for me, it is always incredibly humbling. And I remember the first few times that somebody came into my rehearsals to critique or provide feedback, I was terrified. I still get nervous when we have people come in to work with our kids. And I think about the importance of our students watching us grow and develop and learn in real time in front of them. And yes, it is coming from a place of vulnerability, and it is terrifying to get critiqued on your conducting in front of your kids. But what a powerful message to send to our students, that if it's good enough for us, then it's good enough for them to be able to receive that feedback from us. And knowing that it comes from a place of love, and that it comes from a place of care. Whenever Mr. Floyd is in our band rehearsals, before he offers feedback, he always says, and I say this with love in my heart, and then he gives, criticism or constructive criticism to the kids. And I just think that is such an important thing for kids to understand, that constructive feedback is not negative. Like it's an opportunity to grow, and for us to be willing to receive that in front of them and live in that space of vulnerability, huge. And it can be life changing for kids. So yeah, when we're talking about mentorship, get out there, ask. And if somebody says, no, it doesn't work in my schedule, propose another time. If you don't have money to pay to bring a clinician out, offer to take them out for dinner or a beverage after you finish up with rehearsal. If that doesn't work, you don't want to pay out of pocket, offer your services in return. Hey, I want you to come and listen to my band, and in return, I'll come in and give the same amount of time in your band room.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to learn just as much from being a clinician as you learn from having a clinician in sometimes.
And I think for
So
people, you're talking about not being intimidated or like just asking people, ask, like I talked about, I'm going to have Michael Colburn on in January. Like you just ask people to do stuff, and
yeah,
because if people are really what you consider good or high level, and especially if they've had longer careers, odds are they're pretty nice people, because if they were
yeah,
hard to work with, they probably had a hard time, having a long, good career.
I have to share this very quick anecdote. When I first had the opportunity to meet Donald Grantham, he's a professor of composition at the University of Texas, and we were working on some of his music. And he came out a couple years ago. Our wind ensemble was playing Starry Crown, another great piece of his. And I remember he was in the band hall, and I was so nervous. It was my first year as the head director here, and first time playing a huge piece like this. And I was so self conscious. And he stood back and he talked so kindly to the kids, and he was so complimentary and giving them great things and telling them the history behind the piece. And then after the rehearsal, he looked at me and he said, I just want to thank you for playing my music.
Mhm.
And you talk about being just floored that somebody I revere as like one of the greatest wind band composers of our time, just to thank me for playing his music. That was a kind of transcendental moment, to realize that we're all just human, and we're all scared of things, and we all want to feel acceptance, and we want to feel valued and have gratitude. It was a perfect moment to realize that, like you said, you ask these people that we regard as the stalwarts of our industry, they want to help because people help them get to where they are.
Yep. Speaking of gratitude, I'm very gracious. I'm very, have tons of gratitude. I can't get it out right now because I'm getting ready for a nap or whatever. But I have a tons of gratitude for you for making the time for all of this. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and for all of the work that you put into the Growing Band Director. It's a great resource, and I'm grateful. And I know many of us out there are grateful for this as a resource to our community. So thanks.
Best of luck on your trip. Safe travels. Make some great music and have fun with those kids.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.